Depending on what country you're in, animal rescue is either something that people have grown used to, or it's something very unique and different. Imagine being the founder of the only animal rights organization in an entire country. Well, on today's episode, I talk with Catherine Besch, who is the founder of the Vietnam Animal Aid and Rescue Organization. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization where Cat, as her friends call her, and the few people that are helping out at the rescue, some as volunteers, others as very low paid employees because there just isn't the money to pay them more. She and the entire crew at the Vietnam Animal Aid are really doing what they can to raise awareness around animal rescue, about homing the animals, and the difficulties that they face day in and day out that many other rescues don't face, depending again on the country they're in. So stick around because you're in for quite a treat as I talk with Kat about what it means to run an animal aid and rescue in a country where very few people understand what this is about.
Welcome to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, where your host, Kathleen Gage, shines the spotlight on vegan and plant-based businesses and entrepreneurs from all walks of life committed to cruelty-free eating, healthy lifestyles, animal compassion, and the environment. Enjoy the show.
So, Kat, I am really impressed with what you're doing, but I'm intrigued by what you're doing. You actually have the Vietnam Animal Aid and Rescue, which means you're in Vietnam. And let's start with when you became vegan, and then let's transition that into how did you end up in Vietnam?
Oh, those are very closely related things. So I became vegan about 9.5 years ago. I actually have this is Times for Change, Pensacola, Florida. A little shout out to them. This is the date that I went vegan, which is 9.5 years ago, February 2013. I was in Hoi An at the time, Hoi An, Vietnam, where I currently live, where the organization is. I had kind of been on a slow journey there. Over the previous year, I was living in Mongolia before that, and then South America, Chile and Peru, and kind of little bits and pieces kind of kept hitting me, but mostly because of dealing with couch surfers, quite frankly. There was a lot of people that I wouldn't ordinarily have met that were travelers, and just kind of like when you meet people that are already thinking outside of the box, they have these ideas that you're not used to being exposed to. When I came to Vietnam, I kind of got more into understanding where food was coming from, and I basically started my research a couple years prior about where it was coming from, and kept trying to do the whole reducitarian, flexitarian, blah, blah, blah. And then one day it just kind of hit me. And there were some people involved in that were kind of straight with me. And they said, you love animals so much. Your life is about animals. What's on your plate?
Ooh.
And it was really confrontational to me, because I am naturally a bit of an aggressive confrontational person. And I was like, excuse me, I can love and eat animals. Watch me, right? So my research led me to the understanding that no, you can't. You just can't. So yeah, Vietnam luckily has the best vegan food in the world. Big shout out to Vietnamese vegan food. I eat like a goddess in this country. It made becoming vegan quite simple. I did 1 month of veganism thinking that it was just kind of like a test to see if I could manage it. And I couldn't understand why I wouldn't keep going. The next month, I started the organization. I don't recommend it necessarily as the track for every vegan to become vegan and immediately start an animal rescue in Vietnam. I think that's ridiculous.
Well, part of your claim to fame is it's the only rescue or the first rescue in Vietnam.
It's not that we're not the only rescue, definitely not, and not at this point. At the time when we started it in 2013, it was among a handful, I'd say 4 or 5 total, in a country of 90 I guess 92 million at the time.
Wow.
So that was a pretty big deal. We were the only ones in central Vietnam. So we were 700 kilometers from any international standard veterinary clinic. I didn't think that would matter. I didn't really understand that at the time. That didn't really make any, I had no concept that vets weren't vets everywhere. There was a difference in the standards. And yeah, at the time we could not buy dog collars in the city, and we had to drive 45 minutes to buy dog food. We had to basically order everything or smuggle it in regards to veterinary drugs. I was getting ketamine in the mail, which I don't think is technically legal in any country, but this is Vietnam. But that's what we were doing to have surgeries, injectable anesthesia. It was a nightmare. I have no idea how I survived the first couple of years, particularly. Yeah.
And now you're on year 9. You're on year 9 and
nine and a half. Oh, I count the days at this point. I wouldn't say that some things got easier, not as many things as I would have liked to have been changing, but ultimately we are the only animal rights organization in the country we're the only farm sanctuary. We're the only organization in the entire country that speaks out for all animals and really means it. We are abolitionist vegans. We very strongly believe that there is no ethical use for other sentient beings, period. Right. End of story. There doesn't need to be any explanation beyond that.
Well, and I'm curious because, I'm in the US. I'm actually in Oregon in the US. And here, the big thing is rescuing dogs and cats and horses too, even though a lot of people have a real misunderstanding of what it means to rescue horses, and they don't realize how mistreated they are. We have 3 horses ourselves, and we have 2 chickens.
I came from the equestrian community as well, so I know exactly. Yeah.
So in Vietnam, I'm curious, what do they eat dogs? We've heard that in Asian countries, dogs are eaten. What is the cuisine of Vietnam other than vegan? You mentioned there's a lot of vegan.
Oh, we have
choices.
far more vegans than the U.S. ever will, by the way.
But what's the most common meat that people eat?
The most common meat is pork, pigs most commonly. So people will cry rivers about the 5 million dogs killed in the country, 1 million cats. And yet they seem to ignore the 44 million pigs killed every year in this country, the over 600 million chickens killed in this country, about 2 million cows. Most of them are imported. Most beef is imported. But the most common meat is pigs and, of course, sea life. So we are, if you look at the map, it's not that hard to figure out why. It's a big coastal country. And so obviously, we have a very large fishing industry, a massive aquaculture industry, which is just, fish farming is just simply disgusting. And
Right. Well,
if you lived around it, you'll understand. But
and it's so interesting. Like the longer I'm vegan, and it's only been 4 years for me, so I'm still a baby vegan by my terms. And especially when I talk to people that have been doing it for decades. I actually met recently one gentleman that was born a vegan and has been vegan all his life. He has never consumed meat.
I've met them here in Vietnam. Yeah,
that's incredible. And with what you're doing with the rescue and the sanctuary, tell us more about that. Like, what is a normal day, if there is such a thing for you? What does a normal day consist of?
That's you followed up your own question with the answer right there. What is a normal day? I can't imagine what a normal day would be. Normal day is being in a constant state of crisis. Rescue, and it's a very strange psychological state to sort of subsist in as well. I think people don't really understand what that's like, to never really know what's coming. We no longer can actively rescue in the way that we had previously, because we've lost over 2/3 of our funding since the war in Ukraine began in February, and inflation, the economic situation, fuel prices, whatever. We have basically just eliminated our ability to do community outreach. So we've actually slowed down a little bit. But the day starts at about, for me, it starts about 4:30 in the morning. And then we have two houses. I have one that I'm in right now, and that's the one that it's kind of like our hospital, our cat hospital sort of, and kind of like the misfit house. And I've got a rooster that's in rehab for a cyst that exploded on his leg. That's crazy. And then about 100 meters down the road, we've got the animal shelter, which has the remaining animals, which is about 23 there. That's the two pigs, our 10-year-old chicken. She just turned 10 this month. Very excited about her birthday party. And then we've got the cats and the dogs left there as well. And it's cleaning. It's an enormous amount of cleaning, maintenance of the property. It's like any farm, you know, they poo.
They absolutely do. They poo, and they poop a lot, a
lot of poo.
Sure.
I'm a poo expert. I can tell you a lot about poo. But there's a lot of cleaning, there's a lot of sweeping, there's a lot of mopping, there's a lot of medicating. All of our animals that are now with us are the ones that have not yet been adopted, and they've been with us a lot of times for 9 years, 10 years, as a result of the fact that they just have behavioral or chronic health issues, right? So we're dealing with a lot of medical issues. We do a lot of vet trips. A lot of vet bills, I think, like any other rescue, but it's far harder than you would think. It's not just zipping up the road to go to the vet.
Right,
we have to hire a car. We're not allowed to drive. We don't have our own cars. We have to get the crates to put them in the hired car. I have a driver, drives me up to Da Nang, 45-minute drive, and they just sit around and wait. And that's what I did today. I'm particularly exhausted. It's unbelievably exhausting. I think people don't really grasp that we don't actually roll around in kittens on beaches here.
That really is the misunderstanding a lot of people have, because with the horses that we have, one came from a rescue where 100 horses had been abandoned in high desert in Oregon. By the time they were found, 60 were dead, and the rest were just near dead. And it was
that rehab's hard.
Yeah. And people think, oh, you have these wonderful horses, you just go, and they have no clue. And so
wait till the farrier bill comes around.
And that's the thing. Let's look at like the expenses involved. And first, before we talk about that, what made you decide Vietnam? Why Vietnam? And
it's a great question. So my dad is a Vietnam vet.
Okay.
And so he was a Marine officer. He was wounded in 1967, August, actually almost. Wow. Yeah. Just a few days from the anniversary of him being wounded in Quang Tri province. And in 1967, and then he came back as CIA in 1971 to 73 with my mother. They were newlyweds, and so they lived here towards the 71. We finally really got out. The fall of Saigon was 1975. So this was, my parents left Saigon 1973 when they were really beginning to pull out a lot of troops already. Mm-hmm. And so my dad was obsessed with Vietnamese furniture, art, ceramics. I grew up absolutely, like, our whole house was decorated as if we were in, the 17th century Vietnam. This was always a huge part of my life. My parents loved Vietnam so much, even though they were there at a time when it was war. It's always been a part of my life. I was a kindergartner who could find Vietnam on a map. This was a place I wanted to come to show my parents before they died what had become of the country they left in 1973. I planned on staying 6 months. The food's really good though. And the beaches are nice. The people are amazing. The government is a raging nightmare. I'm not going to lie about that. It's not perfect. The traffic is crap, but there's a lot of great things that kept me here. And once I started the animal rescue, I realized that this was this was my life, and this is what I was kind of set up to do for a really long time. And this was my experience. You know, I managed stables in the United States for, you know, since I was 15 years old. I was running barns and riding horses and working with top level vets and Olympic trainers and things like this in Virginia. And it just kind of led me to this place that I didn't realize 10 years ago this would still be kind of my daily existence.
Right, right.
It's exhausting, but yeah, I'm glad I picked the right country. At least the food's great.
Well, you know, and you keep coming back to the food. So, you know, maybe I need to make a trip there just to experience that. But, you know, I want people to know that it's past midnight right now, your time. Yeah. And that's how committed you are to getting the message out and with what you're doing. You're doing a great job. If this is you tired, I can imagine when you're full energy.
This is full of caffeine, honey.
Okay, that works.
Not water.
Works. So I'm curious, you know, how do you find the animals to rescue, and then what happens? Like how do you rehome them? What's the whole process?
It's a bag of worms, honey. That's a bag of worms. Yeah. So the animals that we rescue, a lot of them have been, they're not hard to find. The cats and the dogs specifically are quite easy to find. People also, I live in a UNESCO World Heritage town. Hoi An is an amazing, beautiful town. It has a lot of tourists as a result. And so tourists have a tendency to message us about an animal here and there, Vietnamese and locals and tourists. And so over the years, that's how we found them. We managed the vet care. We had the only nonprofit. We were the first and only nonprofit veterinary clinic in the history of Vietnam. At the time in 2015, we lost that. We had no choice. If we were going to continue rescuing at the rate in which it was necessary as a result of the interaction with the animals that we were in contact with that were in need of rescue, and just the fact that we needed to sterilize so many animals and the local vets didn't have the capacity for it, we had to open our own clinic. And so that's kind of where the animals come from. They go through a rehab process, which is particularly difficult due to the lack of access to basic veterinary medicine. A lot of times we have to fly to Thailand to buy the products that we need to smuggle them into the country. I'm openly saying this on Zoom. I want you to know this will be, it's not super illegal, but the reality is you can't access a lot of the medications that you need to run a rescue. You can't access the veterinarians. You can't access the drugs, the facilities, and there is very, very, very huge problems with adoption in this country as well. It's just a very difficult place. You have to, in order for rescue to work, this is what people don't really understand. In order for rescue to work, you cannot just take animals. And I think that's what we call hoarding. And unfortunately, it tends to be the baseline for what people consider to be rescue. And it's not rescue. It's moving misery from one location to the next, but you've got no supplies and veterinary tools for this. You've got no quarantine. You've got outbreak potential. You've got burned out, inexperienced staff that don't have time off and are losing their minds watching preventable suffering and death for a living, and are living off caffeine and Valium. And it's a really unhealthy situation. Rescue only works if you can get them in and then get them out to adopted families. Right. So we've had a lot of adoptions within the country, but it's very difficult because you also have the dog and cat theft, which is a really big problem, traffic accidents, rampant infectious disease, which is not in any way being controlled because the Vietnamese government has very, very low understanding of veterinary medicine. I mean, we're number 73 in the world in public health. Veterinary medicine's probably about 100 on that ranking. It's garbage, it's very difficult. So we've had a lot of animals that ended up being adopted internationally. So I do all the exports. I've done around 60 to ish rescues at this point that were adopted abroad, right? So we've got one going to Canada in the next month. a dog. But yeah, EU, US, Canada, Germany. Yeah, lots in Europe. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, how do people find you that are not in the country? What is your web address?
vnanimalaid.org is our website, and
VN,
what's that?
Say that again.
Sorry, vnanimalaid.org.
Okay, we'll make sure to put that on the show notes. But please. I'm curious, how do you get your funding? Because you said that it was really cut back because of the war in Ukraine. Do people donate to you? Do you get grants? Do you, what's the deal there? And do you accept donations?
Yeah, we are fully private donations, individual donations. That's the only way that we survive. I mean, our budget yearly at the moment is around $65,000, and that includes, staff. We barely survive, but we have 5 different methods of donation. We've got, your typical ones in the US. Cuddly's really a big one in the US. I think that most people know. We used to have GoFundMe. We don't use that anymore. We've got PayPal. We've got Network for Good, which is connected to Facebook. We've got, so donor management system handles all of that. But through the website, through our Instagram, through our Facebook, I mean, there's many ways. We've got lots of ways to get money to us. But getting grants, I should point out, we're a 501c3. We're an American 501c3 for about 4 years now. And however, getting grants, even as a 501c3, operating on foreign soil, having paid staff, and I say paid staff, they make, our highest salary is $400 a month. We're really, and being vegan and not cat dog only, we basically have no grants available to us. You'd be surprised how few funding opportunities we have for grants as a result of so many weird little things that nobody thinks to be barriers to the grant world. So it's really just individual donations. Our average is about $20. Is that
$20 a month or $20 a year? Or just
no,
$20?
I mean, my average individual donations people are donating is about $20. We have some larger donors. Our largest donor ever was $5,000 in the past 9.5 years. That's the largest donation we've ever had.
Okay, so just to be sure, people can go to your website and there's a place where they can donate on your website. And it's VN, repeat that again.
vnanimalaid.org.
Okay, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. I'll stream it across this video. And I encourage people, go ahead and make a donation because, when you look at what you're doing to help the animals and really just raise awareness around the cruelty that goes on. Now, on the flip side, I know there has to be some rewarding parts to what you do. What would you say? Give us, maybe a story of one of your most rewarding experiences in the time that you've had the rescue.
It's a harder question than you think it is. It sounds like an easy question coming out of your mouth. I know it does. It's really hard because my full-time job is to watch preventable suffering and death. And to pick out individual stories of some did do really well. For example, I do get updates for animals that I have adopted. Like I just saw one in Germany just a few days ago who was a rescue from the dog meat trade. And I actually stopped a dog catcher and I threw I think that was the time I put his keys down my bra from his motorbike. I've done a couple once I saved him from a cat catcher and I put it down my bra and I was like, you're not getting in there. You're not driving your motorbike now. And then the other one is I threw him into the woods. But anyway, I stopped one cat catcher and one dog catcher because I'm a little bit of a hot ticket. I'm a bit of a hot tempered woman. And so one of those animals I know she's so fluffy and gorgeous in Germany, playing by the river. I've got one in France that's really happy, but that ultimately is not the success we need. I mean, we've got I mean, like I said, over 600 million chickens are killed every year. I think my biggest success story, the one that brings me joy on a daily basis, is every time I talk to my 10-year-old chicken Louise. She is a goddess. I don't know why she doesn't make me bow to her. She rules me. Like, I am her slave. She is my master, and I am infatuated with her on a daily basis.
That's awesome. That's
I
awesome.
can't stop kissing her. Like, I would surgically attach my lips to her face if I could.
That's
really
amazing. Well, let's look at like a global perspective of people have become much more aware of what's going on with factory farming, with the animal trade and all that kind of stuff. And yet for some reason, people still refuse to give up the consumption of meat or the cruelty to animals. What can you say that might help people to understand that they do have a responsibility and their actions do make a difference? Because a lot of times people say, oh, it won't make that. Like, I just started using cloth bags when I go to the grocery store to put my fruits and vegetables in, because I don't want to use plastic bags. And a thought occurred to me is like, is it really making that much difference? And then it was like, yes, absolutely it is. Because if enough people do it, it will, maybe one dolphin won't drown, maybe, or die. Maybe one turtle won't get caught up in the bag, whatever it may be. So what can you say to people that might encourage them to at least explore a different way of living when it comes to meat consumption?
I mean, animal product consumption in general, I think it is our responsibility to end for not only for animal rights, but for public health, for global food security, for climate change. These are things that are, the responsibility of humans to just be able to live on this planet. I mean, especially people that have children or grandchildren and are not really thinking about kind of what their future is going to be like. I mean, unfortunately, we have animal welfare organizations, rescues in particular, that will tell you that doggies and kitties are suffering horribly, but completely ignore the 2.8 trillion animals that are murdered every year for human consumption, which affects all of those things that I just listed. Animal rights, global food security, public health, food safety, I mean, it's just this, so many things. And I think, I personally was somebody who hated vegans for 33 years. I mean, legitimately hated vegans. I thought they were terrorists. I thought they were absolutely insane. And here I am running the only animal rights organization and farm sanctuary in the entire history of Vietnam. I kind of think people are capable of change if anybody can change. I mean, like, I used to work for the National Turkey Federation. My full-time job in Washington, D.C. was to get people to eat more turkey. Right? People change. The idea. They do. And I love what you're doing. I love your passion. And, I was the same way. I was a huge carnivore and I didn't like vegans. I wouldn't identify as a vegan when I first gave up meat and dairy. I did it for health reasons. 6 months into it, it was like, I had my own coming to Jesus, if you will, experience where I got it. It was like in that moment I got it. And, now my life is committed to raising awareness, and I do it through things like my podcast show. So Kat, in closing, so grateful to people like you who have been like, wait a second, that wasn't right. I get it. Let's talk about it.
It's like I used to wear a lot of leather. I rode a motorcycle. I wore full leathers and everything. And I look at that and I go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? But I wasn't thinking because I didn't know.
Nope. So you were doing what everybody else did.
What are your final thoughts for people? What would you like to leave people with?
I don't know. I haven't slept in a really long time. I think it's really hard.
Drink lots of caffeine. That's my final thought.
my final thought. No, my final thought I think would be that I would like people to look at a bigger picture and understand that speciesism and speciesism is really what's killing us. I think what's killing, like I said, 2.8 trillion animals. And if you can't do something to a dog or a cat or a child, you really shouldn't be doing it to a pig, a chicken, a fish, a bear or whatever. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. We are compassionate by nature. We are born this way, and it is beaten out of us in so many ways in society. You can decondition that. It is very, very possible. And I just know that once you get to the other side, once you really see, there's just no going back. There really isn't. It's such a better life on the other side. And I know it sounds like, I don't want to be, I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm proselytizing. But it really is better over here.
It really is. And I just want to say thank you so much, Kat, who is the founder of the Vietnam Animal Rescue Aid and Rescue. Yes. Did I get that right?
And Vietnam. Yep.
In Vietnam. So thank you for your time this evening. I have to say in the middle of the night, because you stayed up just so we could have this conversation. And I encourage people to visit the website.
12:30.
Yeah, well, but visit the website, make a donation, and give up that Starbucks for a week and make that donation. It'll be well worth it.
Really could use it. We're pretty scared right now.
So we'll make sure to let people know, and I'll be making a donation of my own. And I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. And thank you so much for your time. And to everybody out there, really consider going vegan and giving up animals in any way, shape, or form that brings harm to them. This is Kathleen Gage with Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, wishing you a great day, a great evening, a great middle of the night.
You've been listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live. And we always appreciate reviews. Join us next time for more inspiration, education, and motivation to build your business one cruelty-free and healthy person at a time.